Excellent. Pushing
Okay,
out the
can you
live
still
now
hear me, Sammy?
Yes, I can still
Okay,
hear you.
awesome. Okay,
Excellent. And we're
my thing's
officially
no
live.
good, but at least I got good Wi-Fi now.
Yay! So we're getting ready. We're officially live now. So we will start the recording in just a second. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Sammy K. Powers, and this is the PHP Roundtable. This is a live podcast of developers discussing topics that PHP nerds care about. The ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn a little something from each other. If you're listening live and want to be a part of the show, send a tweet to PHP Roundtable with a question, and we'll try to get your question answered if we can live on the show. Now, I'm kind of in a co-location area. I got stuck and stranded out in the burbs of Chicago because my car exploded yesterday, but I will try to monitor the tweets as much as possible. Typically, when I'm at home, I've got this big 27-inch iMac I'm able to monitor the tweets on, so I might be going back and forth a little bit. Just heads up. You've probably heard it 100 times, but the general PHP community is really fantastic. It's super great, and user groups play a huge role into why the general PHP community is so fantastic. And if you've ever mentioned if you've ever monitored what's been going on in the PHP community, you've probably heard one of the community leaders, like Cal Evans, say, get involved in your local group, and if you don't have one, just start one. Today we're talking with someone who is heeding that call and trying to start a user group in his area. And to do that, we'll have a number of user group leadership experts on the panel to discuss what it takes to run a solid user group in your area. Now, this includes finding food and venue sponsors, finding speakers, dealing with money and expenses and all that stuff, all the little details that go into running a Rockin user group. So now that we know what we're talking about, let's meet our panel, and usually we go in no particular order, but today we're going to start off with the guy who's going to try to start a user group in his area, heeding the call. Sean Barrett is the web developer at Workflow Design. Welcome.
Hi, Sammy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to... I'm really excited to kind of see what the experts have to say about trying to get something started in your area, so this is cool. Nigel Rowe, Digital Engagement Project Manager for feedingamerica.org. Welcome, Nigel.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah. And we also have Raphael Doms, Serial User Group Creator. Apparently he likes Lucky Charms and Kellogg's. I don't know. I'm trying to go for that cereal joke a bunch of times, but it's not working very well.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure. Also, Joe Ferguson, PHP developer, host of the Nomad PHP Lightning Talks, and organizer of the Memphis PHP user group. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks.
This is round 2 or 3 for you, I think.
2, yeah.
Yeah, 2. Nice. Also Joshua Copeland, who is the Las Vegas PHP user group leader. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Sammy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're sitting right next to this other guy, Adam Kolb.
The man, Adam Kolb.
The man. He's the Sunshine PHP and South Florida PHP user group organizer. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, glad to be here.
So
this
you
is my first time on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is cool. And we did the Sunshine PHP live recording this past year, and hopefully I'll get a chance to make it out there again, and we can do some more live podcasting. Sunshine PHP was seriously like top in my book, one of my favorite nerd meetups ever.
Yeah, we're within just a couple of days of actually announcing the talks for this year, so it's coming along.
Nice.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and start this thing off. I want to kind of shift the focus over to Sean, the guy who wants to start this user group. So I just wanted to ask you, what inspired you to start the user group in your area?
Well, I had been thinking about joining a PHP user group in the greater area here for a while. I'm up to last spring I was living in Salem, Massachusetts, so I had Boston PHP fairly close by. But then upon moving, I moved out to Keene, New Hampshire, which, if you don't know, is in the very southwest corner of New Hampshire. It's closer to Brattleboro, Vermont than any other city in New Hampshire, and especially closer than Boston. So my closest user group would have been about an hour drive out to Manchester, and that was a little bit further than I wanted to do, given that I have a 3-year-old at home, a lot of responsibilities at the house. So I wanted something a bit closer. And around that time, I had joined Nomad. And then saw Cal's, I got to hear a lot more of Cal's speeches about starting your own user group if you don't have one close by, and I decided, you know what, let's give it a try. I'd been going to a Drupal user group that meets in Keene, and things that had been a pretty good vibe, and I thought, well, if the Drupal user group can keep going then there should be enough people close enough by to be able to get a PHP user group going.
Makes sense. That's awesome. So what have you done so far? I actually did a little accidental stalking on you, and I saw you had a meetup recently, or tried to do a meetup. Have you done anything official so far? And
we did have our September meetup. We had myself and 2 others there, one of which was the leader for the Drupal user group. Another was a gentleman who just happened to find us, who just got started in PHP, and he joined in. We spent most of the night talking about project that he's getting going. He had only been working with PHP for about 3 months. It was a necessity for work. They were trying to move over a legacy application to PHP from, I believe it was from Lotus. And so he kind of endeavored on that himself, getting started with CodeIgniter. So aside from going over some PHP 7 stuff and PSR 7, we spent the rest of the night just kind of going over his project, helping him get started and finding the direction that might work best for him.
That's cool. That's awesome, especially talking about PHP 7 stuff. Yeah. Well, I want to hear from the rest of you guys. We can kick it off with Adam, maybe. What inspired you to become a community leader? And I mean, was this kind of like a big plan from the beginning, or did it happen really organically, or what was your process like?
It was a moment of insanity. I blame teenage drugs. No, actually, I'd been a part of the community for a very long time, and going to conferences like Tech and ZenCon and things like that. And there really wasn't much community in South Florida. At one point, PHP Architect crew was looking to do some different regional one-day mini conferences, and they did that a few different times. But when they were doing that, Keith Casey actually gave me a call, and he said, "Hey, Adam, how do I find a community down there?" And I didn't know. I didn't have an answer. So there really wasn't anything. So that kind of planted the seed that maybe we needed something in South Florida to help bring the community together and bring something there, right? And then I was at PHP Tech following that, like 7-8 months after that, and Lorna Jane Mitchell was actually doing a session in one evening as just an offshoot from a hackathon. And she was talking about how to start a user group and some of the challenges and how to overcome that. And so I attended it because I didn't have anything else to do, and there was beer involved. And so she was talking about how to do it, and so from there I came back from Tech, and I actually created an account on Meetup.com and started the user group. I mean, I did reach out because there was a person locally in South Florida who had a meetup prior to that, but it had died a few years prior. And I tried to reach out to that person and see if I could revitalize it, and they wouldn't communicate with me. So I started a new one from scratch, and now we're up around 800 members.
Wow.
And we do 3 or 4 meetups a month, depending on availabilities of venue and speakers and so forth. And we average about 100 people attending at various meetups throughout the month, each month, and it's going pretty well.
And how did that transition into Sunshine PHP, the big nerd event?
So Sunshine PHP has really been embraced as one of the lead community conferences, and I'm so blessed that people really love it. Of course, it is in Miami in February, so it's kind of a win. But I wanted to start something. The last time there was a PHP conference in Florida was when PHP Tech did it. I think it was in 2006. They did it in Orlando before they permanently moved it to Chicago and kept it there. So I attended, and I thought, you know what? If they did it and it was a success then, why can't we do it now? So at ZenCon, at the time ZenCon was actually kicking off, which is ironic because I'm here at ZenCon now as the MC and organizer. So ZenCon was happening, and I was seeing all the tweets come across my feed, and everybody was at ZenCon. I wasn't able to go that year, and that was like almost 5 years ago. and I wasn't able to go that year. And I said, you know what, we really need something in South Florida, because if I'm not able to go, I'm from South Florida, how many other people in South Florida also are not able to go? And so I thought, I called a good friend of mine, Pablo Godel, who was one of the founders of Server Grove at the time, and I said, Pablo, we should have a conference in South Florida. And he said, yeah, you know what, that's an awesome idea. So then I thought for a minute, I thought, okay, Sunshine PHP, that's what we should call it, because it's the Sunshine State. So we named it Sunshine PHP. Literally an hour after that call to Pablo, I announced it, during ZenCon, and we immediately got, Rasmus Lerdof sent me an email a few minutes later and said, hey, I hear you're going to do a conference. Do you want me to come speak? And before you know it, I had speakers lined up and everything else. So that was in October. We launched it that morning in October for February. Because it was the only time slot I could find on the calendar that didn't have something. There was already Benelux, there was already Confu, there was already Midwest, so I chose the first weekend in February, and we've done it every year since then. This is our 4th year. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So
That's what started it. It was just I saw an opening for it, and I wanted other people in South Florida to be able to get to a conference, and the best way to do that is have something local.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Raphael, I'd love to hear you. What inspired you to start becoming? You're actually a serial user group creator. So what happened there?
So, I didn't mention in the beginning, but I'm currently running Amsterdam PHP, represent, right? It just so happens that Amsterdam PHP is actually the 3rd user group I've created. Over my life, I've been moving all over the place. I'm kind of like a nomad. And apparently everywhere I go, I tend to just create user groups. So the whole thing started back in Brazil, 2006, I guess. So I pretty much predate most of the user groups out there. It was the beginning of the user group movement, and we had our first conference in Brazil. Right? It was the first time we had a conference. It was further away in São Paulo. So I came back and I realized, oh my God, more people do PHP. It's not just me, right? And then I was not the lone developer. So I started asking around and trying to figure out, who else is doing this close to me, because I was like literally a one-man shop in a little newspaper somewhere, doing front and back and doing everything. I was like, okay, so where are these people? We started a mailing list. Ended up we found enough people and started the user group, but it never really picked up as a monthly meeting kind of thing. We did a few smaller community conferences because we just wanted to do something. Just get people together, get them talking. Also, I wanted to become a speaker. No one accepted me, so I created my own conference, spoke at it, right? Like you do.
Yeah.
But that user group kept going. It was a very, very active online user group, not very active, in real life, but mostly online. But after a few years, in 2008 or 9-ish, I moved to São Paulo. And the user group, they used to have a user group there. It kind of faltered. The conference was going on, so it kind of shifted to a different focus. And once I got there, I got together with these people I met, and I already knew of some of them from the conference, and decided, you know what, we need something more active. We need to build this thing back up and try and reboot it. So it was more of a reboot than a proper creation. But that went pretty well, and it was my excuse to kind of make friends, right? I'm the new guy in town. You need to kind of meet new people. So that's how PHP São Paulo started, PHP-SP. It's one of the biggest user groups I've participated in as well. We have over 1,000 members. I think it's probably up higher than that since then. We participated in the PHP Test Fest in 2009. One of the biggest contributions from worldwide groups. So I was pretty proud of that, and I was actually more proud of it that once I left Brazil in 2011 and came to Amsterdam, the user group carried on, and it's still going strong. It's one of the best groups in Brazil, at least. I'm biased, but I do enjoy the work they do. They have gone into monthly meetings now as well, so they have a lot of stuff going on. And then that brings me finally to Amsterdam PHP, which was, well, it was my boss's request. He's like, okay, I brought you from Brazil. I want you to build a community for us. I was like, okay, I can do that. And second of all, it was a way to make friends. I mean, I literally didn't know anyone in the Amsterdam PHP area. I mean, even the people I knew, like Stefan Koopman's shop, they were further out in Utrecht or Rostock, and they're all further out from Amsterdam. So I needed to make new friends, right? I need to speak to people. I'm a very talkative person, if you might have noticed. So I wanted to get to know new people. And the thing is, PHP Benelux was already in their area. They have a huge user group, right? They were very influential. The conference was already going on. But the problem is they covered the whole area, so Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. So they covered all of this area, which meant they actually came by Amsterdam maybe once a year, twice a year at most. And I noticed there was a lot of traction. People still wanted more, right? People were still interested in talking PHP. So we kind of said, okay, let's set a date. Let's do a preliminary kind of user group thingy. And it really snowballed from that. That was just over 3 years ago. And we currently have, last time I counted, about 1,300 people in the user group. We average 80 to 100 every month for the meetups, depending on the size of the venue. And it just took off from there. I mean, I can keep talking about it half an hour, but you're probably going to get into the detailed questions. But it just picked off, and this city is just so bubbling with technology that the user group is kind of like, I don't even have to run it anymore, right? We kind of just let it go, and it goes on its own. And I found great people to help me, so it was really cool.
Well, that's awesome. It's really cool to hear the stories of how people just get an idea and they're like, I want to do this, and they do it, and then great stuff happens. So what if we get this idea? So I'm going to kick this off to Nigel and Joe. I know, Nigel, you said you had to pop out and pop in, so I want to make sure you get some airwaves here. When somebody gets that idea and they get inspired, where's the first place to begin? Where do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and the enthusiasm is there usually from the founders, the organizers side. So it's like, how do you take that and make a plan that really enables you to reach the folks that you want to have come along? I mean, more often than not, people aren't beating a path to your door and saying, hey, create a group for us. You have to go out, you have the idea, you have to go out and find that audience. I mean, it's kind of interesting because I'm trying to form a new user group here in Chicago for one of the vendor products that I have been using in my line of work for the last 8 years. So I'm trying to formulate that exact plan right now because I know some of the people that I can reach out to, but I need to really come up with where else can I get to them? How can I promote what I'm trying to do and get them interested in it? So it's something I'm struggling with at the moment as well.
Joe, do you have any some tips for how to get something off the ground, something started?
So when it comes to starting user groups, there's not really a handbook for it. There have been a couple of people that tried. I just tweeted out a link to the php.net wiki for user groups. It's wiki.php.net/usergroups, and it has there's a link to a handbook, a PHP user group handbook. It hasn't been updated in a while. The last time I looked at it, but there's two really important resources there. There's one is the UG admins mailing list, which is where a lot, if not all, of the known PHP user group admins, you have instant access to all of their emails. There's also an IRC channel, PHP groups on Freenode. Those are probably the two best places to kind of get immediate, hey, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm wanting to do. And outside of that, it's really kind of, it varies locally. In Memphis, we had a lot of fragmentation. There's the PHP group, there was Python, Java, .NET, and there was just all these different groups out there, and it really came out of kind of pollination, cross-pollinating between the different groups to try to figure out, what are you doing that's working, or what are you doing that's not working, and really kind of pooling resources there. So another thing is look locally and look at what user groups you have and reach out to those people to kind of figure out what are you seeing locally, because it can vary so much from region to region.
Yeah, it really does change from place to place. I mean, having gone through all this 3 times, it's like everyone was different. But the one thing I found that actually helps at least get started is to start small, right? Start small and informal. Just make sure you get 3-4 people together. You probably know them from the office or from the company next door. Start with that, but make sure you make waves, right? You put this up on Twitter. You make sure people hear about it, and then people kind of flock. It's kind of like a field of dreams kind of thing. Build it, and they will come. It doesn't work 100% of the time. I've seen it fail miserably, But usually, if you start small, like you don't have much to lose, and at the very least, you have a nice hangout of friends to start with, right? So it's a good
And
place to
it's
start.
also about managing expectations, I would say, too. Making sure, like Raphael said, don't go big. And like if you hear Cal talk about user groups, it's very much don't try to put on a conference level talk on your first user group unless you just happen to have a conference speaker in town that could do that for you, which is what Yitz did when he started the user group, blanking on the name of it, the New Jersey user group that he started
Short
not too long
PHP.
ago. Yeah, Short PHP. He actually had a conference speaker coming in town and was like, hey, it just kind of everything worked out. But don't expect that. I would say that's an outlier. That's not what every user group is going to see. More often than not, Memphis PHP is where I test drive all my talk ideas. Most of the talks that I do at conferences these days are born out of talks that I've done or half harebrained ideas that I did at a user group where it was like, well, I think this might work. So, I mean, and it's also that for potentially new speakers, and you really kind of have to manage the expectations of your attendees as well, because you don't want to discourage people from coming and sharing. It doesn't have to be this conference level event, but it could just be a couple people hanging out at a restaurant, hanging out at a bar. You don't have to supply food. You don't have to supply super fast awesome Wi-Fi or anything. It's just start small and then build on it, because there's always going to be more people to find. Is what my experience has been, and it's easy to grow. You just have to be consistent.
And I think that's a key thing. What we're all saying here is like start small and start doing things. Don't start planning things right out the gate. I've been involved in so many groups here in Chicago, and we spend so much time trying to build ourselves up and make ourselves much bigger than what we really are. And just those initial connections that you get from those 3 or 4 people that have the impetus for everything is like the most important thing to like build on. I mean, coming down to user groups, it's just like anything. There's really 2 stages. There's like creating it, and then there's maintaining it. And maintaining it is the hardest part. Building it is the easy part. But you've got to start off doing things, not just planning things.
Definitely.
We're getting some great feedback on Twitter. JT Grimes is actually trying to start a user group. He posted on Twitter. I just can't. No, missed it. Oh, East Bay PHP, and he's trying to plan meeting number 2, and he was asking about finding a venue. He's saying that's his hardest problem right now. And what do you guys do in order to find sponsors for venues and prizes and food and stuff like that? Or do you need to worry about food, or is it just venue? Like, what are your thoughts on that whole process? Because there's that kind of gets into a lot more questions.
So I say personally, don't worry about the food. Find a free venue. Even before you find a sponsor to pay for a venue, because there are actual free venues out there, especially local libraries, community centers. There are places. You've just got to put a little bit of legwork into actually finding somewhere.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to put legwork out there. I mean, when the Las Vegas user group first started, it was actually held at UNLV, and that was just made through some connections there. But eventually, when that venue kind of they wouldn't allow us to meet up there anymore, and we had to kind of scramble. There actually were quite a bit of co-working spaces here in town that were more than happy to take us in, obviously for the advertisement for them too, for the users coming in saying, hey, well, why don't I get a little $100 a month desk here, and I'm attending all of these user groups anyway. It makes most sense for a co-working space to sponsor a user group.
Yeah, that's kind of like what we tried here with Amsterdam. We did something different, which to me is one of my favorite things about Amsterdam PHP, is that every month we meet at a different company, so we don't have like a fixed venue. We just move around, and what happens is for the companies, this is amazing because they get all of these amazing developers into their space. They get to show off their offices, what they do during the social, and talk to all these people. So in terms of recruiting, it's also a great thing, right? You bring developers to you, and the thing is, the companies they get in touch with us and they say, look, we have space here, we want to host you, right? So as long as they have space for 60, 70 chairs, we're good. I mean, if they have more space, we put in more people, but it just went on like that. We went from one company to the other, and pretty much every single meetup we've had for the past 3 years has been like that. like going to the company, sitting down in their offices. They rent chairs, they put chairs at the end of the hall, whatever they have, wherever space they can fit us in. And I think that experience to me is what makes the whole user group special to me, getting to know these places.
Well, you mentioned something about it's a good way of recruiting developers. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on having the sponsor be an actual recruiting company. I know the developers kind of cringe a little bit when it comes to recruiters just because of the maybe potential past or maybe from past experiences with kind of sleazy recruiters. But if you have a legitimate recruiter who's willing to offer the venue and food, what are your thoughts on that?
So in South Florida, we have a recruiter who is pretty much our standard pizza and soda every single meetup. And the thing is initially, I mean, a lot of recruiters come forward, and of course they want to be a part, right? Because it's not easy to find PHP developers, and the user group is a great place for them to do that. So a lot of them speak up. I've found that not only does it allow me to pull in a recruiter to get the pizza and soda for the meetup, but it also then it opens up a doorway so that I can talk to that recruiting company specifically and other ones who also sponsor here and there, and help them understand how to best interact with us, right? Because if they're sponsoring, they value that sponsorship, and through the way that they value the sponsorship, it also they want to make sure that they capitalize on it as much as they can, and they don't want to upset us, right? And so it actually serves multiple purposes. Not only does it give us a sponsor, but it also gives the developers a voice to teach the recruiters how best to reach out to us and keep it tasteful and keep it professional and treat us like human beings instead of just resources, right?
Absolutely. We've had a lot of success with the Chicago user group here, pretty consistently being sponsored by a local recruiter, and it's like what you've been saying. It's got a cool sort of like understanding between both us and the recruiter. So yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of that. JT Grimes also has another great questions on here, but Beth Tucker Long says that tech colleges and universities are great venues, and you provide community and education for their students, and they provide space. Which is really cool since we're talking about venues. Also, JT Grimes has another really good question here. He was asking about getting members involved as far as taking ownership instead of just having it being the organizer's thing. What are your all's thoughts on that, and also having multiple organizers and not just one person running everything?
Dude, the first lesson of user group organizing is don't do it on your own. Just don't. Just skip that lesson and go straight to having more than one organizer. I mean, you have people like Adam who can run 5 miles and run 5 user groups at the same time. Not everyone can do that. But try to find people who can help you. We have a group of 4 organizers here in Amsterdam PHP, and they are my saviors because every now and then I finish and they're able to keep everything going. I mean, they do more work than I do. I'm just this pretty little face that people tend to associate. But it's really important having organizers, having people to work with you and help you. And what we started here in Amsterdam PHP is I labeled it community enablers. But the idea is I'm not here telling you what the user group is. I'm just organizing it. So if you have an idea, come to me. Tell me, look, I want to run something. I will make sure you get the resources that we have access to, and you can organize it. For example, we have bi-monthly game nights, which I actually organized by Ross Duck's wife, Aisha. She came up to me. We had the idea, look, we want to run board game nights, just board games. I'm like, that's awesome. So I gave her the resources of people I can get in touch with, sponsors, communication channels and everything. And she's just responsible for organizing it, which doesn't mean she has to do everything. She just needs to make sure that someone is doing everything, right? So whoever has the idea just becomes the responsible one to make sure he delegates or he or she delegates, and things get done. They don't have to do it themselves. So that kind of empowers everyone to, this is kind of like I'm part of this. I can also create my own stuff, and we did that with hackathons, TestFest. We have a whole bunch of people who tend to come in and help us organize other events while we focus on things like the monthly events or insane ideas like making elephants and shipping them.
Yes, you guys were responsible for the beautiful black elephant that I was able to obtain. I think it was legally, but it is now part of my collection. But I do want to make sure I come back to Sean, because he's the guy who's trying to start all this stuff. Sean, what would you say is your biggest maybe problem or potential hurdle or biggest unknown? Like what are some of the things you're struggling with right now?
Right now, the biggest issue is just getting more people involved. I mean, like I said, our September meeting had 3 people, including myself. We had nobody RSVP for the October meeting. As of right now, we have nobody RSVP'd for the November meeting. And so my big question at this point is my community just smaller than I thought it was, or is there something I am lacking in reaching out? I'm trying to get one of our local colleges. We've got Keene State College just down the road from where we meet, and I'm trying to get them involved at this point to let the students know that we exist. They have a fairly decent programming department there, computer science department. So I figure with a school that size, with a computer science department that's that popular, there's got to be somebody in there who's doing PHP or is at least interested in it.
Can I just add something to that? That when I was in college, I didn't even know these meetups existed, and then that they were also free, and that I would have loved to have known that these existed. I only found out when I started actually working in the real world and through coworkers. And by the way, to like get more people to attend, that's kind of what I did. Is I started dragging coworkers. And saying, you suck at programming, you know it. Come on, go learn.
Yeah, that's what I was going to echo. Is start by bringing the people from your company in, then you bring the people from the company next door, which you know does PHP. Then you go around the corner and find that other company. But we know the places where people do PHP. I mean, chances are you know at least 3 or 4 companies around you that do it. And if you don't, just open up Monster Board, filter by your town, and there you go. You have a whole bunch of companies, right? Start pulling them in. Look, we're gonna do this thing. It's just gonna hang out, have some beers, right? Give them something to flock to. It's what we did with São Paulo and Brasilia. We had a mailing list where everyone could just join. Nowadays we have Meetup, which works very well for that. Just make sure that URL starts going around to these companies and try and get the managers, especially if the company is trying to recruit. That's usually a good way to enter these companies. Like, hey, well, maybe we could have a meetup there, and then you start pulling the company in as a sponsor, and then you pull in the people from the company as attendees. And this can be a very informal thing. Just do they have a cantina? Do they have a little bar? Can we just meet after 6 and have 1 hour of discussion on PHP? Or maybe if they're having problems, oh, I have solved this problem. We can just go have that discussion, right? You don't even have to have like a speaker and talk or a formal setting. Just get them talking. Just start the communication, and then it tends to slowly move forward. But don't give up. Don't stop. Right?
Don't stop believing. I just feel like that would be the appropriate song to come in right there. So I'm curious for as far as we've talked about finding venues and having people sponsor food and things like that, but when it comes to money issues, I feel like things kind of get a little weird. Specifically asking for money and then what to do once you get the money. And I think Nigel and Joe, we were talking about this at PHP Tech this past year. And I think it was Nigel's who came up with this. He was saying instead of asking for money, ask for things, or like come up with super actionable items that people can do instead of just, hey, donate and make it awesomer. But Nigel, was that you who said that? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was me. I remember the conversation, kind of morphed off from other things, as you do. I mean, money and things go hand in hand, right? Without you don't get things unless you've got money. I mean, just having a basic, like everybody puts $2 into a jar or something, you got to start off small, build up to when everyone's putting $10 in. This comes down to also if you have, a group of people who you consider to be like co-organizers, you can step up and put a little bit more money in, but you need to have a budget. Getting people to donate things, donate experiences, donate whatever, that's something that can then be converted, auctioned off, into a raffle. Everybody puts $2 into a jar. You go in for, whatever item has been presented as a potential prize for that meeting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Amsterdam PHP, we started off a foundation to be able to receive funds. So we actually have a non-profit foundation behind the user group. But the amount of people who actually give us just money is it doesn't exist. We have maybe 1 or 2 sponsors that have done it in the past. However, if you reach out to them and say, look, we want to make shirts, and you can put your logo in the back, people tend to flock more to that. But what we really have is we have the meeting package. So you sponsor the space, whether you want to rent it or host it at your own company, the food and the beer for a single meeting. And it's very actionable for them. It's just, okay, we figure out where, let you know where, rent the chairs, buy the pizza, buy the beer, right? It's the easiest way to engage with the user group. And for the sponsors, it's just so easy to do, and they tend to do it because they want to host a meeting as well. But getting money is always a hard thing. So I definitely do agree with the actionable stuff. Just get them something that they can do, they can get a direct return on, and they'll probably hook onto that a lot more than like a sponsorship package with money values.
You really want to be, you want to sell yourself and sell the group to the sponsors, because they have to see what they're going to get. Like Raphael said, hey, we want to do T-shirts. That's a direct return that they get. That's really important. When you're going and asking for money, saying, hey, we want to do this, you have to either know what this is and be really confident in what that costs, what you're getting from the sponsor. And a lot of times you may not always know that. You may not always be really confident in that. So that's part of the thing where you really want to know or have a plan, or go after, like what Raphael's saying, they have a meeting package. This is what you get. This is how much it costs. And for Memphis PHP, we have a recruiter that we host the meeting in their office. They buy food, beer, drinks, whatever. And anybody outside of that, we pretty much just say, okay, well, if you want to sponsor and come in and talk to the group, this is how much it costs. And honestly, we don't really have anybody that ever really does that, just because there's not a whole lot of value for them because of our size. Our size is relatively small, so it's more of a value add. It's that value declaration or describing what they're going to be getting out of it. Sometimes sponsors will send you swag. Like I've talked different companies that have developer evangelists send them out requests for swag. They'll send you T-shirts and stuff, and it won't cost you anything. It's stuff to give away. That sort of thing. So yeah, when you're talking to sponsors about money, it's always a really weird conversation. And if you ever do have an event, like we did a big event over the holiday last year, that was, we rented out this bar area that had a pool table and games and stuff, and it was going to cost us however much money. So we went to the sponsors and we were like, okay, well, we doubled what our cost was because we wanted to bankroll the next event, right? So find out what your costs are, and don't be afraid if you can provide the value. Like if you're gonna fill an event with 100 people, don't feel bad about charging a sponsor more for that to get that, because you're giving that value to them.
I'm going to put a bookmark in this because I know Adam and Joshua are being beckoned by ZenCon. So I always give everybody an opportunity to do a shameless plug at the end. So I want to make sure you guys got an opportunity to do that before you head out. Yeah.
So some things I want to plug. Of course, if you're in South Florida, come see us. It's SoFlo PHP, the South Florida PHP user group. Come to Sunshine PHP in February. There's worse places you can be in February than Miami. And also check out my podcast, Run Geek Radio.
And if you're ever in Vegas, definitely come check us. Our meetings are on the first Thursday of every month. So yeah, definitely if you are in Vegas or you're a Vegas resident, we'd love to have you at the user group.
Sweet. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. One more thing I'd like to add about the money is Meetup.com has a finance tool that I really like. Yeah. Anytime you take in money, I put the deposit there. It gives the users a way to see that I'm actually using it, for expenses and things like that. So it's a good way to track it and give you transparency with your users. So anyway, thank you so much for having us on.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming.
Bye.
Have
Take
fun
care.
at ZenCon.
Yeah.
So we're
So
Go ahead, Nigel.
so Sammy, not to cut you off, I just wanted to
No, go
say,
ahead.
I think one of the things when you get a group of people with this level of experience together, you're going to hear a lot of golden rules. Start it small. I think one of the other golden rules is don't spend money unless you really have to spend money. And go out. Why buy beer? Why buy pizza if you can get somebody else to do that for you? And another key thing is if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. So sometimes you might be hesitant to approach a company, a recruiter, a sponsor, whatever, to provide some level of sponsorship. But you know what? If they're not prepared to give you money, maybe they are prepared to give you other things. Meeting space, pizza, beer, whatever. If you don't ask, you don't know what you're leaving behind.
Yeah, definitely ask.
Ask,
Don't
ask,
be.
ask.
That's what you need to do. I mean, Amanda Palmer wrote the Art of Asking book. It's a great idea. Just read that book, but ask people. What we have is we have like a standard PDF with all of the sponsorship opportunities or ideas that we have. Just send that to people randomly. Look, are you interested? This is what you can do. But if you have any ideas outside of that, just make sure to get in touch with us, just so we can get intent as well, right? So then people say, well, I'm interested in doing something, but it's none of these things that are on this PDF. So then we start exploring other things. So it's like, okay, do you want to do a shirt? Do you want to do a mug? Do you want to, pay for it? So we found that a lot of companies stepped up after that. And we have companies, for example, that what they do is they pay for 2 books every month, which we raffle off every month. That's their sponsorship package. We make sure we mention them as we're doing the raffle. We put up their logo. But pretty much every month they come in, they give me 2 books, and we give them away. That's it.
Raphael, could you make that list available? I'd like to see that PDF.
Yeah, definitely. I can send a link to it. I can send a PDF to Sammy, and I can send it to you afterwards as well.
Yeah, I mean, having that type of wish list is like fantastic because there's so many things that you need help with, and being able to do more than just talk about it, to point people to it up on your website, to have a PDF that you can send out to them. It's so important because it makes it sound like much more real. It's not just something you're just like, well, it'd be great if we could have this. I mean, you really are. This is something we need all the time. This is what we need your help on.
I've also seen it scare off sponsors because they realize we're really serious.
Yeah, and when you ask people for things, tell them, hey, I'll put your logo wherever you want it to be put. You want to be able to. You don't get anything for nothing. You need to be able to spread that love around.
So I want to actually transition this a little bit into, since we're still talking about money and things, specifically with money. From our conversation at PHP Tech, Joe, you had mentioned something about having a bank account set up for your user group as like a nonprofit. And actually, JT Grimes was asking this question. He's basically asking all the questions that that are the good ones to ask and that come up so often. So what happens when you get money? Where do you put it, and how do you put it there? Like, where do you even start with getting that set up?
Well, so what we've done in Memphis for a couple of the groups was we just set up nonprofits. It's a corporation. In Tennessee, it's actually called a mutual benefit nonprofit corporation, which essentially means you're enough of a legal entity into the state that you're forming in that you can go to the IRS and say, hey, I need an EIN number, which is what you absolutely have to get a bank account at any bank in the U.S. So that's what we've done for a couple nonprofits in town. Memphis PHP doesn't actually have one because we've never actually had to handle cash yet. Or a check or anything like that. We've never had any direct monetary donations. But I think JT was asking, at what point do you go there? And I think the responsible answer there is, and I'm not a lawyer, I am not a nonprofit expert, but I've done a lot of nonprofit stuff or starting and working with nonprofits. Anytime that you're handling cash, you should definitely be thinking about this or put your first. In Tennessee, it was like $120 to get started. And that was opening the bank account, filing the legal paperwork, and maybe it's $200 to actually seed the bank account with some money. So the first $200 you get, do that, because that way you have, at least for a year, you have that legal entity to where you can go get a bank account if you need it, even if you never deposit anything, and even if the bank account fees will eat up the money that you do put in there, that's fine. You have that accessibility. It's really not that hard to do, and I would guess most states. I've looked into it in New Jersey and Tennessee and Mississippi. They all have this mutual benefit nonprofit status. I would be surprised if other states didn't have it, because that's the first step that you have to take in to be able to become the big nonprofit, the 501 status, which most nonprofits go with 501c3, which is charitable organizations. We did one of those in Memphis as well, and that's a whole other ball of wax to get into, but it's definitely possible. It's not that hard to do.
That's awesome. We've been considering doing that for the PHP user group here in Chicago, and we just still haven't kind of come to actually make it happen. So it's definitely on the list.
One thing about that is you need to take into consideration that it does involve overhead, right? So if you're struggling with the user group in terms of having time to organize, receiving money is one of the first things I usually step away from, right? I mean, you can run the user group having monthly meetings without ever seeing money, without any problems, right? I mean, if you like what we do, we have the company that hosts also pay for the food and the beer. It pretty much means that for the monthly meetings, we don't see the money. We just tell the companies what they need to provide when we get there, and that's fine. That takes away a lot of overhead. But once you want to do bigger things, then definitely all of that helps. And once you've at least my advice would say, put it off until you actually have a need to handle money. If you don't have a need to handle money, if it's just small fees, maybe, you want to do Meetup, for example, and it charges, $72 every 6 months. If you can get other people to pay for that or find some other way to do it, then better, less overhead for you. But once you have big plans, like once you're ready to do something like, for example, make elephants, then you want to have something in place because you're going to be handling a lot of money, you're going to be handling a lot of confusion. You just want to have something that's stable for you in that case.
Some good advice. I'm curious what kind of format you guys recognize as being kind of really well. It works really well for your meetups. Like the traditional speaker, like you find a speaker, they talk for 45 minutes, and you have some questions. Is that pretty much how you like to format it, or do you have like a game night? Do you have like a let's just talk about Doctor Who night or anything like that?
I'm here. So we have our monthly meetup where we have regular speaker, 45 minutes, opening, closing, and then a social. But to me, the real focus of that meeting is the social. The talk is just the excuse to get you in. Then we have a 2-3 hour social until we get kicked out of the venue. Because to me, that's where the value is meeting the people. I mean, the talk, you can see the slides online, you can see video. It's not really going to be the main thing, but meeting the people, I was telling David when we were in South Africa last week, going to the community, you're meeting the people who are going to change your life, right? They changed my life, and I'm pretty sure anyone that frequents community has the same understanding that these are the people who are going to make a difference in your life. So to me, that format is great. We just do the little talk, but focus a lot on the social, which is why we have the beer and pizza to get people to stay there. Don't run off for dinner or don't go away somewhere. Just stay there and talk. But we also have the bi-monthly. So we oscillate. 1 month we do just a general drinks meetup. We just get a couple people in the bar. The other month we do the game night, where we don't talk PHP. And the thing is, to me, that started off as a way to actually bond further and make friends, not just peers, right? Because we're all peers, we all talk about PHP. But for me, moving to Amsterdam, it was all about making new friends, right? And that game night is pretty cool because everyone brings their significant other. So you actually bond as families, as groups, right? And you get this group of tightly knit people who are really good friends, and these actually become the regulars on the meetup. So these are the people we see every meetup, because we've just become this group of friends who want to hang out with. So that's a good idea. At least it went very well for us.
See, there's another golden rule. Don't overprogram. I mean, you really need to find out, once you get beyond that 4-person to 10-person stage, you really then are dealing with a lot of people with a lot of different interests. You need to find out what they want to do, as well as providing that common format of having a speaker, having somebody come in and actually talk about a developer topic. I mean, the socialization is definitely, the main reason why everybody wants to get together. They don't want to come along to hear a pitch from a recruiter, or to necessarily put themselves out in front of a recruiter. So you need to find out what people want to do, but you also need to have some substance every now and then. I'm a big fan of substantive one meeting, socialization, other things happening the next meeting, and wrapping everything around. So every time you have a speaker, you also have socialization beyond just questions and answers of whoever's you've got presenting. But definitely, a game night is fantastic. Game video nights. I'm not too sure about the Doctor Who stuff, but there's lots of other things that everyone can bond around. Like get people to suggest. What's the worst movie for for presenting tech topics. Have everybody come around and do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 style evening around that. Laughing at what's happening.
Icebreakers are such a great thing. Nick Escobedo, who's one of the co-organizers here at the Chicago PHP User Group, came up with this great icebreaker for our last game night, which is our first game night we've ever had. It was super successful, and he basically printed out a bunch of pieces of paper that said, find somebody who could talk about Solid, find somebody who could talk about repositories or whatever, and then he also had ones on there talk about somebody who could, or find somebody who could talk about recruiting, and we were being hosted by recruiters, so it actually forced us to mingle with the actual sponsor and the host, and we were kind of getting to know everybody on a first name basis, and like Raphael said, is like felt like it was like kind of like really friends, like we were like starting to move beyond peers and becoming like, oh, I'm starting to know you more as like a person and a human. And then we moved on into PHP Jeopardy, which was super awesome, and since we had already had the icebreaker and everybody was kind of friendly, it was just a complete riot. So it was super cool. So not all meetups have to be this kind of speaker and you sit there and listen and disappear without the social aspect. The social aspect is crucial for meetups. So yeah, great advice on this kind of stuff. And I really would love to get more detail about all these things. I have a bunch more stuff. I think we need to have another episode about this, and maybe Sean could come back on and tell us his progress and like where he's at, and maybe come up with some new questions and stuff like that. Kind of maybe even bring on JT Grimes he was trying to connect on Twitter and ask a bunch of questions, see where they're at. Maybe bring in just people who are trying to start this off. But we do need to wrap it up here, and I like to wrap it up with this thing called the Developer Shoutout, which recognizes a developer in the community for being awesome. And for this episode, I asked the panel to nominate somebody who really did a lot with inspiring people to create user groups and things like that, which the people on this panel could be great nominations for this, but we were selecting somebody who was not on the panel. But what this person is going to get is a $50 Amazon gift card sponsored by Laracast. And Laracast is the Netflix for developers. It's at laracast.com. It's basically tons and tons of screencasts of how to do really cool things in PHP. If you're here to learn about PHP, you're sitting here listening to this podcast thinking, like, I want to take my PHP to the next level, well, definitely check out laracast.com. It's kind of Laravel focused, but there's lots of other stuff on there that's not Laravel, so it's like testing and all kinds of stuff. So thanks, Jeffrey Way, for sponsoring the developer shoutout every month. For this episode, the panel nominated Beth Tucker Long. She was actually chiming in a little earlier. I don't know if she's still. I think she might be at ZenCon or something. But Raphael, why did the panel nominate Beth Tucker Long for this developer shoutout?
There's this little game going on between myself, Jeremy Coate, and Beth. And Beth is we try to get more and more people to start user groups. I think all of us kind of do that. But Beth is really tough competition. She keeps. If you remember her from like PHP Architect days, she would wrangle anyone into writing a book or an article. Right? You couldn't walk past her, and you would have like a promise to write a book or something. And she did the same thing with user groups. I mean, if you came up to her and you mentioned any insecurity of, I don't know if there's a community, then she would just talk you into doing it, like straight away. And so I know plenty of user groups, especially in the U.S. and over here in Europe, that started because she, pushed them along. And she just has this way of wrangling people into doing stuff.
Very cool. Well, Beth Tucker Long, we will be trying to reach out to you on getting this $50 Amazon gift card shipped out to you, and we might actually see you in person and just hand it to you for the next one. I want to make sure that we wrap this up with making sure to give everybody an opportunity to do a shameless plug. So let's kick it off with Joe. Do you have anything that you want to promote?
Yeah, if you're in the Memphis area, check out memphisphp.org. That's the local user group. And if there isn't a local user group in your area, check out Nomad PHP. I host the lightning talks that we do every month. We do 2 lightning talks. You can find them on the Nomad PHP YouTube channel.
Nice, nice. What about you, Nigel?
So I didn't mention before, I'm very much a non-profit developer. So I'm always going to be promoting who I work for and work with right now, which is feedingamerica.org. I encourage you all to go and help us fight the issue of food insecure people in America.
Excellent. What about you, Raphael?
Cool. Well, that's a good timing. So first of all, if you're in Amsterdam, drop by amsterdamphp.nl or php.amsterdam because we're hipsters with top-level domains. But I just launched last night a campaign for a new PHP shirt. You can find it on rdoms.github.io/php-shirts. Not the easiest URL. I failed at that. Which is basically just pretty much a shirt that says composer require PHP and then version 7. It's just something I came up with. If you find that nice, cool.
I want one. What about you, Sean? Do you have anything that you want to promote?
I guess I could promote my user group. So you can find us on Meetup, Monadnock PHP. If you're in New Hampshire, especially the southwestern area, definitely check us out. Come by. We're meeting on the second Wednesday of every month.
Yay! So I'm excited to see where that thing goes. So you'll have to let us keep us updated, and I'm pretty sure that maybe in about a couple of months or something, maybe 6 months or so, maybe we could have like a check back in and do another one of these and talk more some of the things that you're running into. And because this conversation we had at PHP Tech went on for hours, and I took copious notes, and we haven't even scratched the surface of all the things that we could talk about. So we'll definitely be rounding back to this topic. And if you are going to be joining us for the next episode, we're going to be talking about design pattern mania. This design pattern this, the design pattern that, all over the place. We're talking with a couple of really cool people, Adam Watham, Anthony Ferrara, Ross Tuck, all talking about like how we can break down all these design patterns into something that we can maybe make a basic CRUD app without kind of ripping our hair out. So if you want something on this show that you're like, hey, this would be a cool topic, you guys should talk about this. I've been getting quite a few requests lately, so really great ones. ORM, so like data mapper versus active record. That sounds like a really fun topic, and that was recently suggested. So we'll definitely, I can't remember who it is. Sorry, I'll give you a shout out in the next one. Whenever we do it, I'll give you a shout out for the idea. But yeah, if you have an idea, definitely hit me up on Twitter, PHP Roundtable, or my Twitter handle is Sammy K. And I'd like to thank Joe, Nigel, Raphael, and Sean for joining us, and also Adam and Joshua, who had to bail out a little early. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this awesome discussion, this roundtable discussion, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you guys later.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thanks, Sammy.